In this movie, we'll explore the concept of an anchor point and take a tour of the audio file editor. Just like MIDI, audio regions in Logic can follow the underlying bars and beats time grid. We've seen already how we can use the snap modes to move our regions around, say by bar amount or beat amounts. Right? If I set the snap mode to bar, I can now move the tambourine.8 forward or backwards by a whole bar. But notice it's moving relative to the time grid behind it. The beginning of the tambourine.8 region doesn't start right on the grid, and it is set to relative. If I were to set snap regions to absolute, it'll snap the beginning of the tambourine.8 region to the nearest bar boundary. And if I do that, this region is now going to be out of sync because the contents within the region are arbitrarily placed within the region, and Logic wants to snap the beginning of the region to the nearest bar. Let's hear how it's out of sync. Right, so that's not exactly what we want. It turns out that every region has what we call an anchor point, and the anchor point's always set to the beginning of the region. But you have the ability to realign the anchor point to say where the sound starts or even somewhere in the middle of the region. And once you do that, that anchor point would be the new thing that snaps to the bar boundary as you move in, say, a snap bar type of situation. Let me show you how you can get access to the anchor point. If I double-click on the tambourine.8 region, I get the audio track editor. Let's switch over to the audio file editor. It didn't update to see our region here, so I'm going to go back and with the file editor still open, I'm going to double-click the tambourine.8 region one more time. There we go. So it updated to that location. Now you can see in the audio file editor, we can see a very up-close view of the audio waveform. And this is great for very fine audio editing. Another thing we see is the anchor point. So like I said, it's set to the beginning of the region. And we can go in here and just grab hold of this anchor point and move it to where the sound actually begins within the region. And now that I've moved that anchor point, I'm going to close the editor by clicking on the little scissors tool up here. And notice very faintly in the bottom of the region, there's a little dot. That's an indication that we've now moved the anchor from its default location at the beginning of the region to another point in between or within the region. And the power of doing this is now I can move this region and no longer will the front of the region snap to the bar boundary, but instead the anchor point will snap to the bar boundary. And then we can get the tambourine back in sync. Let's hear it. So the anchor point is an important concept if you're ever trying to sync up the middle of a region to a specific location. And it's as simple as clicking in here, going into the audio file editor, and moving the anchor point to the location you'd like to have snap to the underlying grid.